This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covell. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. I want to open today's podcast with a great line that I posted on my Facebook. Quote, "Everything we do is 100% systematic. There's no override, no individual decision-making whatsoever. This is the focus of the firm." End quote. That is from Marty Bergen at Dunn Capital. Marty's the president at Dunn Capital. I think Bill's still the chairman. The cool thing about that, I love that when I was 16 years old, Marty was my baseball coach. He clearly has moved on to very big things now as the president of Dunn Capital, but I think it's so cool that Marty and I have stayed loosely connected all these years. He actually did introduce me to Bill back in the mid-1990s, so I'm always appreciative of that learning experience, going out and finding and meeting. Someone just wrote me this morning, literally minutes before I was getting on this podcast, and they were asking me how they could meet Michael Marcus, who was famously profiled in Jack Schwager's Market Wizards book. Well, if you want to meet Michael Marcus, if you want it bad enough, if there's a reason enough for you to do it and for him to do it, it will happen. If one wants to talk about it, and one wants to send Mike Covell emails, but one is not really serious about doing something, then it won't happen. Gosh, I hate to be so blunt, but that's the way the world works. Let me get back to where I was going. Leading from Marty's comment about being systematic, I want to play a clip that was on Bloomberg in the last month. One of these fine-looking model correspondents, teleprompter reading Bloomberg talking head ladies is talking to David Harding. Let me play the clip.
I'm here with David Harding from Winton. David, with $25 billion under management, clearly you are doing something right. When I think about the way you invest, you're a man who follows models, trend following. Talk a little bit about how systematic is more important than fundamental right now.
I'm not saying sure that I'd say it was more important than fundamental, but I would say that the factor of momentum, which is what trend following is based on, that factor has been the most useful, what we scientists would call an explanatory variable. That's been the most effective explanatory variable, thing that explains movements in market price movements in the last 20 or 30 years. So Eugene Fama last week got the Nobel Prize for his three-factor model. And the three factors are supposed to be size, volatility, and value. And all of those are good, useful ways of forecasting markets. But none of those has been anything like as successful as momentum in the last 25 years.
David's a nice guy. He's British. He's not going to completely fillet Eugene Fama. But in his nice sort of way, he does remind people that, hey, Fama's work is great, academic beauty, but it doesn't beat the performance of trend following. That's all I'm going to go with David today, because I want to move right back into somebody else that I have featured on my podcast over the last year and a half, 2 years, and that's Hugh Hendry. And I know that Hugh has never been a classical, technical, price-driven trend-following trader. However, if anyone follows my podcast and follows Hendry's work, he has often said things that are extremely trend-following. So I've never really known if he was a closet price-driven trend-following trader or not. I thought maybe that he was. However, Hugh has come out this week. Hugh is often considered a perma-bear. He has come out this week. And hold on, I should give a disclaimer here. I briefly met Hugh in early 2013 at a conference in Tokyo. I asked him if he wanted to be on the podcast. He did not. And so I always have to be careful if I'm giving praise or criticism to anybody that I want to be clear about my prior involvement so nobody can say, "Oh, Covell, you've got some hatchet agenda." No, not at all, actually. I'm just going based off what Hugh has said in the last couple weeks And let me repeat what he has said. I cannot look at myself in the mirror. Everything I've believed in, I've had to reject. This environment only makes sense through the prism of trends. He means this environment, current equities going up. I can no longer say I'm bearish. When markets become parabolic, the people who exist within them are trend followers because the guys who are qualitative have gotten out. He goes on to say, I've been prepared to underperform for the fun of being proved right when markets crash, but that could be in 3.5 years' time, end quote. Now, I think that is a great follow-up to David Harding, who's, David Harding is a technical trend following trader, reacts to price movements. He is putting it out there with Bloomberg and saying, boom, the record's clear. Hugh Hendry clearly has not been doing that the last couple of years, even though, like I said, it sounded like he might be. And now he's come out and he's basically said, yeah, well, David Harding's right. David Harding is right. Follow the trends. The qualitative, or fundamental, if you want to call it that, the qualitative guys that want to bet on things going down when things are going straight up, get their butts handed to them. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Now, I think that the interesting thing that Hendry says also is that he was prepared to underperform for the fun of being proven right when markets crash. But that could be 3.5 years out. A couple points there. Who in their right mind invests with somebody who is talking about having fun with their money? With all due respect, and I know it's a little confessional-like in that comment from Hugh Hendry, but man, I don't think clients would be happy about that you were prepared to just trade in a certain way just because you want it to be right. Psychologically, emotionally, that is the downfall of traders. So here you have one of the biggest names of the last bunch of years. He made a lot of money during the crisis. And now he's coming out saying he just wanted to be right for the fun of it. I've seen a lot of trading books. I've not seen that as a precept for successful trading. That's like the one that's like the holy grails, the crazy statements. Now, in Hugh's defense, Charles Faulkner was on my podcast the other day and we addressed this. And Charles said, well, and I'm paraphrasing, at least he's being very honest. Well, and Charles is accurate about that. He's being very honest. However, not a good thing. So as I lay out the comment from Marty Bergen at Dunn Capital, I play David Harding's clip. I lay out the scenario with Hugh Hendry basically admitting trend following is the way to go. I want to move into something a little bit different. And this is a documentary that I've heard about today. Oh, it's all related. Just hold tight. It's not leaving where I was just at. It's related. It threads through, trust me. So a documentary produced by Penn and Teller, and I have to say that if you don't follow Penn and Teller, separate accounts on Twitter, you're crazy. Because if you're interested in trading and making money, then listening to people that are logical, rational, reasonable. And I think anyone that follows me is going to realize that their politics are right there with my politics too. Very libertarian, for lack of a better term. So Penn and Teller produced this documentary on the Dutch master Vermeer. And so people have always wondered about Vermeer's work, his paintings from the 1600s. And people have theorized that he used an optical device to get a certain photorealism. And so Penn and Teller, they found this guy. I think he was friends with Penn, I believe, but he was kind of a tinkerer, an inventor. And he had seen one documentary about the theories of how Vermeer painted and whether he might have used a certain lens or a certain type of camera that he invented at the time that would allow the light and color, a tool to allow him to paint. So you have the image of all these fantastic paintings that he did. But what's interesting is, how did he do it? And you see the analogy with trading is sometimes we get so fixated, so focused on the mysticism, This man is just so smart. He's so natural. He's so intuitive. But then if you get behind the scenes and you find out what's really going on behind closed doors, what's going on behind closed doors is exactly what he doesn't want you to know he's doing because he's afraid you might do it too. Which is, hey, that's a normal way to feel. If you've got a really cool way to do something, maybe you want to keep it hidden because if you think the masses know how to do it too, it'll take away from you. Look, that's the way of capitalism. That's the way. And Teller makes this comment, quote, "One of the things that I've learned about the world of art is there are people who really want to believe in magic, that artists are supernatural beings. There was some guy who could walk up and do that. But art is work like anything else. Concentration, physical pain. Part of the subject of this movie is that a great work of art should seem to have magically sprung like a miracle on the wall. But to get that miracle is an enormous aggravating pain. To see Vermeer as God makes him a discouraging bore." But Teller says, but if you think of him as a genius artist and an inventor, he becomes a hero. Now he can inspire. See, it doesn't take away from his artistic ability to say that he has a certain tool or a process or a system. He's still brilliant. He still has to execute. I'm just saying that if you go through the track record, for example, of the gentleman featured in the Market Wizards books, the original New Market Wizards books, many of the men featured in my world, their genius is, yes, sitting down, executing, making it happen, sticking with it. However, there's a system. There's a process. That's how it happens. I love that. I love that. Those light bulb moments when you realize the process. And I mentioned Dunn Capital in the beginning, and I think back to when I first went into his office in the mid-1990s, and there wasn't a computer screen on a desk. And at some point in time, when I was there most of the day, at some point when my first visit, at some point in time in the day, a bell started ringing. And like somebody just casually got up from their desk, went over to the one screen in the corner that had the quote feed, saw that a signal had been hit, and picked up the phone and called a broker. That was the system. It doesn't take away from the genius of Bill Dunn and his firm. It just shows you there's a system, there's a process, there's a model, whether in painting or whether in trading. Or Penn and Teller. Penn and Teller are the masters of it, right? They put on this fantastic show, this illusion, this magic. But behind every illusion, behind every trick is a process, is a model that when you break it down, you can understand, oh, here's how they got the result. You don't see the process. They don't want you to see the process. They just want you to see the outcome. And speaking of outcomes, depressing. So instead of working hard, instead of inventing something, instead of pushing hard, there are many people in society today that want government to fix all this. So don't figure out a trading strategy. Let the government legislate equality. Let the government redistribute wealth. The latest person that I've seen to come out with this new thinking, I guess it's not a new thinking by any stretch of the imagination, Pope Francis. He has come out, he has denounced economic inequality and consumerism. He put a paper out. He says it's going to guide his papacy. He decries an idolatry of money and warns it would lead to a new tyranny. Here's kind of an excerpt paraphrased. Quote, "Some people continue to defend trickle-down theories, which assume that economic growth encouraged by a free market will inevitably succeed in bringing about greater justice and inclusiveness in the world. This opinion, which has never been confirmed by the facts, expresses a crude and naive trust in the goodness of those wielding economic power and in the sacralized workings of the prevailing economic system. Meanwhile, the excluded are still waiting," end quote. Well, first off, consumerism, everybody is involved in this consumerism thing. And the cat's out of the bag. I don't know if the Pope is watching these videos from Black Friday in America with 20-something women beating the shit out of each other over a 23-inch flat screen TV. Hey, guess what? Consumerism is in the blood of people. You're not going to walk that one back. It just ain't happening. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. It is what it is. The second most alarming part for me, though, is the Pope coming out and talking about inequality and fixing it. And then quite a few writers, like the excerpt that I just read, they just want no free market. They want it fixed. Who do they want it fixed by? And I'm thinking of that classic Milton Friedman clip that I put on my Facebook recently with Phil Donahue. And Phil Donahue is from the 1970s. And Phil Donahue is basically asking him about capitalism being good and it's not fair. And Friedman says, hold on. Do you think politicians operate from the goodness of their heart just for the betterment of people? Of course not. They have a vested self-interest. So anybody who comes out and wants the government to legislate, quote, inequality, it is awfully naive. It's extremely naive. And that's the nice thing to say, because I assume the Pope has good intentions. I assume the Pope doesn't want to see, quote, pain and suffering. But how naive is it to put the power of legislating this so-called inequality in the hands of government bureaucrats? And government systems all across the world are entirely different. It's just insanity. As I would say in Vietnamese, kung kung ding ding. Crazy. I think the interesting thing also about the excerpt that I just read is the guy saying, not the Pope, this is the excerpt from the article describing where the Pope wants to go, which I'm assuming the Pope said essentially the same thing. I've not read his multi-page document that he put out. I've read excerpts of it, but I've not read all of it. It bored me to tears. I don't need to read socialist propaganda. Tangent, sorry, back. Anyways, in the excerpt that I just read a second ago, it talked about the free market and the belief that it will bring about greater justice and inclusiveness in the world. What in the world is the definition of justice? Think about it. These people throw these words around. Justice, economic justice. What the hell does that mean? Economic inclusiveness. What the hell does that mean? Does that mean some guy can sit around on his couch, not work hard, get fat as a house, and say, oh, I need my economic justice. Government, take it from the hardworking guy and give it to me. What is wrong with us? And I just despise the fact that the Pope comes out and lends his credibility to this nonsense. And it is nonsense. I understand the good intentions aspect of the Pope, but to lend his name, to lend his credibility, to lend the office to socialist propaganda, just scratch your head and go, what is wrong with the world? Okay, yes, not a tangent, all related, because you know why? In many ways, the Pope is criticizing Marty Bergen and Dunn Capital. He's criticizing David Harding. He's criticizing Vermeer. He's criticizing anyone that works for themselves to figure out how to do something. And this gets back to that crazy Obama comment about how you didn't build that. Because essentially the Pope is saying the same thing. Because no one's giving credit to the inventor. No one's giving credit to the entrepreneur. No one's giving credit to the guy that's just in the corner making something happen. You know, trend followers don't get bailed out, right? It's the Warren Buffetts that get bailed out, the JP Morgans, the Goldman Sachs. The trend following traders are the true libertarian entrepreneurs making something happen. So why not, if you're the Pope, why not come out and at least give the caveat of like, hey, by the way, I'm not talking about the guy over here that's making something happen, that's invented something, that's worked his butt off. No, they just include everybody. So that basically creates a disincentive that if you do work hard, your money's going to be stolen by the system to give it to the fat guy on the couch. Let me move away from the Pope again. He clearly raises my blood pressure. Let's get back to the thinking of Marty Bergen, David Harding, being systematic, trend following works, the idea of Vermeer developing a system, a process, a model, even talking about Penn and Teller, their system, their model. I've been practicing something in Saigon for the last few months called acro yoga. Fantastic. And it's re-emphasizing, reinforcing in me the idea of deliberate practice. Check out some of these pictures. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or brag or anything, but if you want to check out what acro yoga is, check out my Facebook and look at some of these pictures. Frankly, my teacher makes me look good because she's basically a Cirque du Soleil acrobat for all intents and purposes. But it's a lot harder than it looks. And by employing deliberate practice, constantly trying to improve at a very high level, I mean, that's ultimately how Marty Bergen makes that statement about systematic. It's ultimately how David Harding is so confident about trend following. They've been down the path of the deliberate practice. So it doesn't make a difference whether it's trend following or acro yoga. It's all connected in this deliberate practice aspect. Okay, my blood pressure just got high again because I started thinking about the Pope, because clearly he doesn't care about deliberate practice in the entrepreneurial world. He just cares about legislating away inequality, allowing government bureaucrats who frankly are just after power and lust to do it all. Let me move away from the Pope again. One more thing about acro yoga. It's awesome. If you're a guy, you've never tried anything like this, and let's say you go to the gym and you lift weights and all that stuff. Think about lifting weights, a bench press or a military press, chest, shoulders. When you lift those weights, it's a straight up and down plane. So you don't have to worry about balance, really. The weight's very dense. It comes either up or down towards your shoulders, towards your chest. When you put, and this is going to sound unusual, when you put a Vietnamese woman in your hands, and you're either holding her shoulders while she's off the ground, or you're holding her midsection while she's off the ground, it's just like a military press or just like a bench press, except the body weight is moving constantly. So the adjustments you have to make with your muscles to keep her balanced is putting an entirely different emphasis on your muscular structure. It's really interesting. I know most people are not going to have a chance to try this unless you really go search for it. And I stumbled into it. Fantastic workout. And what it does to your hamstrings as well, awesome. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.